After my first trip to Israel, I came home and was sitting in my living room one night, about a week after I got back. And the lights were out. I could see the lights in the city, the lights of the freeway. And I was having this discussion with a person. I could hear the voice very clearly, but there was no one there but me. And I was having this discussion about why should I convert to Judaism. And I went to bed that night feeling that I had more or less convinced myself and convinced the other person in the room that there was no need for me to convert to Judaism. My children were already Jewish. I didn't need to convince anybody else, and my husband wasn't interested in me being Jewish. He could care less. He just didn't feel that it was important. So I got up the next morning, the very next morning, and went to the rabbi and said, I'm ready to convert to Judaism. What do I have to do? And the rabbi said to me, you could teach me how to be Jewish. And I was flattered by that. He didn't request that I take any classes. There wasn't anything more for me to learn. And I was
playing on the ego.
Yes, I was really flattered by that. But then, in 3 months, I woke up and said, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about Judaism. It's time I start learning. And so that's what I've done ever since. 28 years I've been studying and studying and studying. Just this past week, our rabbi at Temple Beth Israel, Rabbi Citron, decided we should, instead of talking about the Torah portion, which we've talked about already, he suggested we do the Haftorah. And the Haftorah is from Isaiah. And it was so poetic, so beautiful, as we slowly read that portion.
In Hebrew or in English?
Both. We read it in English, but then it was translated. It was so beautiful. It was just amazing, the prose and poetry. And had he not suggested that, I probably wouldn't have gotten around to read it. But it was wonderful, and I'm so glad for his wisdom that he led us to that Haftorah.
Is that what you like most about Judaism? Is the studying or the reflection of that on life?
I love to study, and I like to compare ancient biblical texts to our lives in the contemporary world. And it's amazing how relevant and important those ancient texts are to our everyday life. I mean,
can you give me an example?
Yes, for the business world, there's specific phrases in the Torah that teach us about being honest and fair with weights and measures. And that's how a business person needs to conduct their business. And I mean, it's very relevant today, and it was relevant in biblical times.
Because the nature of man is the same nature.
The same nature, yes, and the honesty and the trust are the same. So it's just wonderful. And I like when somebody delivers a drash on the Torah portion where they make those comparisons, because those are things we can use in our everyday life to help teach and to bring other people along. I had a call recently where someone said to me, what do Jewish people feel about Job in the book of Job and how God treated Job? And it was something I hadn't really thought about, but then it gave me an impetus to study the book of Job and to look at it the way Christians maybe look at it in relation to Jewish people. So I gave her a book of mine that I had in my library about the book about Job, and she is also studying. So it was a nice interchange.
So tell me, how do Christians would look at the book of Job, and how do Jews would look at the book of Job? Is there
very much the same way? The comparison is kind of parallel, because Job was not only a perfect person, he was a very righteous person, and both Jews and Christians feel that Job was kind of mistreated. But then maybe the lesson we have to learn is the lesson of suffering. And I think that's what the book of Job brings out for us. That sometimes you have to suffer to get over to the next area where you can progress.
No lights without darkness.
That's right. So everything's a comparison.